Thanks for having me. Yep, got a new film premiering next week. It's called Sabo. Um, it's by far the most ambitious and biggest, heaviest thing I've ever done.
Super interesting film. I've seen it already. Obviously, it's basically a journey through Ecuador, which is and some of the islands off of it, notably the San Cristobal, which I believe is part of the Galapagos Islands. But yeah, Ecuador has pretty fun to pumping waves. It's like a well-known surfing destination. It borders the Amazon, and like many South American countries, it has this tension between mining and indigenous communities, industrial fishing. A lot of these countries, and I guess this is why they've been the battleground for so long between capitalism and socialism, environmentalism and capitalism, is because yeah, they've just been exploited, and Ecuador is one of these countries. It's no different. Immediately as this film opens, you begin to explore some mining practices in that part of the world, and what it's doing to local communities. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, it's really very well contextualized. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was crazy to be there and to see firsthand what that actually looks like because you have these like iconic natural features like the Andes and the Amazon and the Galapagos Islands that are like, they're world famous for the wildlife and their beauty and like in a place called Intag Valley, which is where we kind of open up a lot of the film, which is in the Andes. It is like one of the most biodiversity dense regions in the world. In fact, I think it is the most. So it's like, you know, um, variety of species per square meter is the highest of anywhere in the world. And and yet you have these huge mining corporations like Gina Reinhardt and BHP, like Australian companies with their dirty paws all over it, trying to get in there to get at the copper below the surface and other critical minerals. Um, and so and this the sort of the stronghold or like the line between them is like these indigenous communities that live in the valley and who are using just like community resistance to fight back and try and push these companies out to protect these territories. And it's happening all over Ecuador. In the Amazon, it's even worse. There's big problems with like the poisoning of rivers that are so vital to the lives of indigenous communities that live in the forest. And yeah, really crazy to be on a surf trip and like be learning about these kind of really intense environmental and community sort of issues. And yeah, it's um it's kind of heartbreaking, I guess, in a way. But also, like the resistance, community resistance is so strong. Like they've had some really good victories over these big corporations, and I think in some ways have set a little bit of a blueprint for what other people in other places around the world can do. So, yeah, that was kind of what it was.
One of the community resistance groups you came across was like a militant female indigenous crew. Can you tell us a bit about them? What you learned about them?
Yeah, so we were staying in a community at the Rio Napo, which is a big river that runs from Kirk. It starts in the Andes and it goes down into the Amazon rainforest and goes all the way over to the Amazon River. And so we were filming with somebody called Elizabeth Swanson Andy, who is Indigenous to that area, and we stayed with her community and she shared with us. So we didn't actually meet them, but she just shared like she told us about them basically. There's like the first all women Indigenous led guard that was just a couple of like a little bit upstream from where we were. And they're called Yuturi Wami and they basically, yeah, are like fighting to keep mining companies out of their community, which is. It's pretty amazing. I think Yuturi Wami, it means like bullet ant, like bullet ant woman. So they're like the bullet ants that are fight like biting on the feet of these big companies, trying to stomp through the region. And yeah, just like a really amazing culture of resistance among women there. Like the women's leadership was just like you could just see it, that people like they're really kind of on the like the forefront of these struggles that are happening and kind of such a driving force. Yeah, so really, really cool.
You also hear about a lot of assassinations, a lot of intimidation from goons who've been hired by mining companies. Often there's this confluence of power between mining corporations, cartels, hired goons. Yeah, all through South America. It is a sketchy business being a journalist or an environmentalist. Can you speak to that? Did you hear stories about rape, murder, assassination,
Mm.
stuff like that?
Yeah, so when we were there in Ecuador, it was a really like tumultuous time. Basically, like the day before we were meant to fly out, so we were there in January 2024, and the day we were meant to fly out, like the day before, there was like this cartel leader guy escaped from prison in Guayaquil, which is a city in the south, and he escaped, and like all hell was breaking loose. A state of emergency was declared, and there was kind of just a lot of opportunistic sort of activity, criminal activity going on. And then while I was in the air on the way on the flight to LA on the way, there was like these guys and these gang members supposedly in balaclavas like broke into a TV station and took the TV hosts like hostage live on air. And so we were kind of like, oh, are we Pacha was already in Pacha, who's a big feature in the film. She was already in Ecuador, and Maddie, who yeah actually held the camera, she was flying from the UK, and we were all going, oh my God, are we still going to go? Like, what are we going to do? And so we ended up going still, but there were definitely like there was a female mayor who was assassinated during that period, and there have been environmentalists and activists who have been targeted and killed over history in this kind of these battles. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, like and the involvement with cartels. That's another crazy thing. Like the sort of unrest that was happening while we were on our way there is kind of a result of the growth in cartel activity that's happened in Ecuador over the last few years. Like everybody told us that it didn't always it hasn't always been like that. Like it used to be sort of pretty free of that kind of activity. And one of the things that we learnt in the Amazon is like there's all this mining that is largely foreign companies that are doing gold mining and poisoning the rivers there, but there's heaps of illegal mining, and a lot of that illegal mining is controlled by cartels. So they are using the same trade routes that they use for drugs to move this like gold that they're getting from the Amazon, which is, I mean, I feel like it's pretty important for people to know, like if you're in a wealthy country taking drugs and knowing that it could potentially be part of contributing to the cutting down of the Amazon rainforest was, yeah, pretty intense to learn for sure. So the gold mining is happening like in the Amazon. It's happening in riverbeds and areas adjacent to rivers. So they're cutting down trees, opening up these mines. And when you mine for one metal like gold, you also have other heavy metals that get mined, and they are usually like in this case they're just like dumped into the rivers. So that is like potentially toxic heavy metals, and so that gets into the food chain through bioaccumulation. It also so people are eating fish that are then contaminated with heavy metals. Um, drinking the water, washing like washing and swimming and playing in the river, like it becomes um, poisonous. And then it also kills the life that's in the river. So that's a food source that is gone, and a ecosystem that is interrupted. And then there's also like a spiritual element to it too for the people who live there that believe that there's beings and that the forest is alive and that this kind of destruction like removes them from the environment and from the place that they know them to be. So that's a really big one. Like it's basically people are so dependent on the health of the river, and then it gets poisoned and the metal is just all exported to the global north, and they're just kind of left with what they rely on is not really reliable anymore. Um, and yeah, that's kind of how the mine, and then deeper in the forest, there's oil mining too. So there's like roads built through indigenous communities that have been built for to move oil from deep in the forest back into Quito to be exported. And and yeah, like there was just something I hadn't thought of before was the fact that it becomes really dangerous for people. Like it used to just be tracks and paths, not for cars. And now people get hit by cars all the time. And like there's been a lot of deaths in the communities and injuries from cars because there's this fast moving traffic that wasn't there before. And yeah, and then the oil extraction obviously has this whole bunch of environmental impacts too. And there's oil spills, and it's basically this place that is so richly beautiful that's being like damaged and destroyed by capitalism and extractivism, and it's not even for people in Ecuador. Like 75% of everything that's extracted in Ecuador is exported. So it's yeah, it's a pretty high price, really.
Ain't that swell with Jed
And Vaughn.
Oh, those guys are back!